Saudi Arabia and UAE, the warring sides in Sudan, have agreed to a nationwide ceasefire for 24 hours. Good evening to you all. A very warm welcome to ETV News. I am Grum Tariko. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and First Lady Zinashta Yatcho this morning planted seedlings along with staff of Prime Minister's office. It is to be recalled that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has launched the second phase of Green Legacy Initiative themed Let's Plant Our Future Today. Meanwhile, foreign ambassadors residing in Addis Ababa recognized and appreciated the second round Green Legacy Initiative across the country. Daniel Kassaun has more on this.
Within a period of 4 years, at the end of that period, we as a country achieved beyond the set out goal and planted a staggering 25 billion seedlings.
Let's join hands and let's make history together, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said this remark in connection to this year's season seedlings plantation scheme of the country. So far, Ethiopians have planted tens of billions of seedlings, including the edible ones. In this year's scheme, more of edible ones will take the lion's share. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has launched the second phase of Green Legacy Initiative, and during the launching ceremony, the Prime Minister confirmed the first phase of the Green Legacy Initiative as successful, in which Ethiopia managed to plant over 25 billion seedlings. He disclosed that the country has set sights to plant another such 1 billion seedlings in the second phase of the Green Legacy Initiative.
የዘንድሮ የግሪን ሌጋሲ ትኩረት ጥራት ነው።
This year's Green Legacy Initiative is focused on special results. We are determined to plant more of edible seedlings to have fruits to all parts of the country. What we are doing now lasts long. It has multidimensional benefits, from averting the adverse effects of climate change to feeding our people. We are taking the responsibility which would be rewarding and benefits the population. Now we have proved that barren lands can be changed to greeneries and grow what we have given to it. Let's strengthen our efforts for this initiative to plant over 50 billion seedlings. Let's join hands and make history together.
Ambassadors residing in Addis Ababa have taken part in this year's grand initiative of the Prime Minister.
This is very important. It's part of a more comprehensive movement, and there's a growing awareness. So that all around Africa there's this kind of initiative, maybe not to the level of Ethiopia, but from east to west in the Sahel, there's this huge project of the Green Wall to stop the progress of the desert. And Ethiopia is quite an example for many countries, not only in Africa. Only if you take into account the energy mix of Africa, which is 98% renewable. So that's a major contribution to a global challenge, and so what is undertaken here is not only for Ethiopia, because global warming is a global challenge, and it must be addressed and fought in each and every country, not only in the country which are sometimes the most affected by climate change.
We have great pleasure to attend the second phase of Green Legacy. So I also very glad to attend today's ceremony in person. I have planted more than 5 or 6 trees in this site. I think the 5 or 3 or 6 trees are the friendly trees of Ethiopia and China. We will continue to do our best to support the initiative. Thank you very much.
It's amazing the efforts that is doing Ethiopia, because this is something not only for this generation but for the next generation. So Green Legacy is something very important for the country, and Italy is supporting through agro-industrial projects everywhere. We have agro-industrial projects in Bulbula, in Oromia, we are going to make in Amara, very soon we are going to make in Tigray and the other part of the region. That is sustainable agro-industrial projects, so we belong to the Green Legacy as well. So on this way, we try to support Green Legacy as well. Yes, I mean, we assist now through, a very big challenge on climate change. So, I mean, Green Legacy could help to tackle, climate changes and all the, the things that we are seeing nowadays about flooding or droughts. So Green Legacy is very important in order to continue, to grow the country in a proper way and to tackle all the damage that human being did to the green.
According to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Green Legacy Initiative is one means of enabling food security through planting edible seedlings.
The first phase of the Green Legacy Initiative, which was launched in 2019, has a grand vision of building a green and climate resilient Ethiopia.
The 547-seat Legislative Assembly of Ethiopia's federal law-making body deliberated on draft budget of the 2023-24 Ethiopian fiscal year. The Minister of Finance, Ahmed Shide, underscored that 801.6 billion per proposed budget has been prepared from the outlook of maintaining national security, helping citizens displaced by natural and man-made disasters, and rebuilding the infrastructure damaged due to conflicts. Let's take a look.
Hello viewers, welcome to our special edition. The Council of Ministers approves over 800 billion birr at the budget of Ethiopia in the fiscal year of 2023-2024. What is this budget after all? Approved budget for 2023 or 24 stands at 801.65 billion Ethiopian birr. Budget approved by Council of Ministers and referred to Parliament for scrutiny approval. The proposal budget considers two major activities. The first is rehabilitating displaced citizens. As you all remember that the federal government and PLF are fighting over the past 2 years in the northern part of Ethiopia, affected a lot of people and Waton regions. And the second one is rebuilding infrastructure facilities. In building infrastructure, the massive activity that was done by the federal government in regional states in the northern part of Ethiopia and other parts of Ethiopia. The budget components are draft budgets embraces 4 components. 369.6 is the current billion that was allocated for the federal government in different activities made by the federal government. And 270 billion is subsidized to the regional states. And the federal government is expected this budget is also allocated for the regional states. And 203 billion capital expenditure for all regional states. And 40 billion is expected to allocate for sustainable development goals in Ethiopia. And budget's vice versa inflation is proposed budget much lower given inflation exceeding by 30%. This is the primary attention of the federal government to slow down the inflation problem that was existing or exacerbating the socio-economic activities in Ethiopia. And the second one is this indicates a measure of precautions to curb inflation. This is all about today. Stay tuned to TV languages.
To tell us more on this, on the proposed budget of the federal government for 2023-24, we have a guest in the studio, Ato Zamarine Nagatu, a renowned economist. Welcome to the studio.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Okay. Ato Zamarine, what's the economic implication of having or allocating this amount of budget in a country like that of Ethiopia?
Right. So as your introductory video showed, the Ethiopian government just approved, or at least proposed, an 801 billion birr budget for the next fiscal year, which in the Ethiopian calendar 2016. And your question is, what is the significance of such a budget? I think in order to answer that, I think it would be good for me to put some context. One is, where's the economy today? Where is the intended target for tomorrow? I think if we respond to that, I think it will give your viewers some insight as to if this adequate, is it the right budget? So today, I mean, for the last 3 years, the Ethiopian economy has experienced some shocks. First, COVID, if you remember, which affected everybody around the world. But secondly, the war in the northern part of Ethiopia. And then last year, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which exacerbated prices in some key materials like fuel, fertilizers and other things that Ethiopia imports. So all these three elements, although I think they're one-off shocks, but they did have a very significant impact on the economy. However, and you would think normally, when an economy experiences something like this, you would think it would actually be in a recession or actually collapse. Now, the data and from the government and other sources, it actually grew during that 3-year period. So it's actually a resilient economy. This year, the IMF is forecasting that the Ethiopian economy will grow by about 6.2%. So of the 4 largest GDPs in sub-Saharan Africa, Ethiopia will be the fastest growing, above South Africa, above Nigeria, above Kenya. So again, I think context is important because we're going to be talking about the budget, because the budget is intended to achieve economic growth and prosperity, at least. So if that's the case, and this year, the Ethiopian government, apparently for this fiscal year, their estimate is 7.5% growth. For next year, 2016 Ethiopian calendar, which this budget relates to, it's intended to grow by almost 8%, 7.9% to be precise.
That's very amazing for most of the people, most of the observers, right?
They probably, and most people are not aware of this. I mean, as I said, when you start talking about 6% GDP growth, despite all these 3 shocks that we talked about, it's pretty remarkable to be very frank with you. So let's come to the budget now. So the forecast for the government, the target is 7.9% for next year. So this 801 billion birr budget is hopefully designed to support that kind of target. Granted, Ethiopia has very ambitious goals, double digit, but again, to recover from these 3 shocks, it takes a while. So it has to work itself out. So it can't be reached, but 7.9 is very good. So, and then coming to the numbers. So what struck me as a very interesting point is, out of that 801 billion, 92.1% of the budget, according to the presentation the Minister of Finance gave to the Parliament a couple of days ago, 92.1% comes from internal resources, from Ethiopia itself. Only 7.9% is from external resources. I remember years ago when the Ethiopian budget was 35%, even some years 40% supported by donors and external sources. So this is one of the things that I found very interesting. Secondly, the way we interpreted the budget is, at least the strategy for the budget is, it's trying to achieve on a sustainable basis macroeconomic stability. And one key component of that macroeconomic is inflation. Okay, I know we're going to talk about inflation in a second, but so they want to create a stable macroeconomic environment where inflation comes down sustainably, not one-offs. The minister himself said that it's been above 30% for a while now. That's not healthy for any economy. So one. The second part of it is the government's fiscal capacity, the ability to collect, the ability to raise money. They also want the pressure on the government to reduce by increasing, for example, collections, taxes, primarily taxes. Those are just a couple of things. Debt sustainability is one of the issues. I mean, for example, if a big chunk of the budget is allocated to debt service, there's no getting around that. You know, you sign an agreement. So the government has given priorities to some of these things. So that's why I said it's an achievement for. They could have published a $1 trillion budget, but they were being realistic, considering all these environments. So I think keep that in mind as we discuss the budget.
So let's talk about inflation, because that's one of the primary problems that we have in the nation. So let's see the budget in light of inflation, especially does it have any role in abating inflation? Indirectly.
It's a very good question. Actually, you know, we've been talking about high inflation in Ethiopia for a number of years. I know even the Ministry of Finance, when they discussed this, I think they have a data that shows that for the previous 15 years, average inflation rate has been 15%. Again, this is unhealthy. Yes, you're growing rapidly, but still, you know, this is a very elevated inflation rate. So to bring it down. So one of the things, there are a number of strategies or policy measures that the government intends to take, and this was also discussed by the minister. One is to what he calls mopping up some of the liquidity in the marketplace, the excess cash that is circulated, not recirculated back. So the government will mop it up through various policy tools that they have, and they're not going to redistribute it back into the market, because that's also creating inflationary pressure. But I always said, one of the solutions for inflation, there are well-known solutions. One is you need to increase domestic production. You need to increase domestic productivity. We import a lot of things from abroad, for which we have no control over their price. So increase domestic production. Secondly, the retail wholesale distribution system in Ethiopia, it's very, very primitive. It's not up to the standards of the third largest economy in sub-Saharan Africa, which is what Ethiopia is. It's the same system that we had during Emperor Haile Selassie. The distance between the producer and the consumer is very long. In the middle are so many middlemen who add no value but increase the price. So if I was the government, I'll cut out all these middlemen, make the supply chain efficient, short, so that the relationship between the consumer and producer is actually closer. Third, along this line, and this is me, I've said this many times even in public, invite foreign companies who are very efficient in the retail wholesale distribution system through joint ventures with Ethiopian companies. They'll bring knowledge, know-how, technologies, and I think they'll make the process transparent because the layers that you add increases. Third, I think in the short term, because inflation affects who? People at the low end of the earning stratum, right? The targeted subsidies that the government is giving now should continue, targeted on basic stuff, food, clothing, that kind of stuff. The Franco Valuta allocation should continue until we, like you asked me the question, is the budget designed to abate inflation? Well, through various policy tools, you can actually help reduce inflation. So, but it is, you know one thing, I saw some data, up to 70% of the average household's expenditure monthly are spent on two things, rent, or let's call it housing, and food. So if you can address the inflationary pressure on these two, you already by definition would reduce the burden on people, especially on fixed income earners, low income earners. So these are some of the issues. Hopefully, when you and I meet next time, there will be some abatement of the inflation on the public.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
To Zamarin. What would you say on the effective utilization of such a budget?
Right, and again, it's a very good way, because remember, if 92.1% of the resources for the budget are coming from domestic resources, mostly taxpayers' money, right? Tax collection, the rest is from treasury bills, but it's still the public's money. That means just like the government has the right to demand you pay your taxes, and you as a taxpayer now should ask, where is my money going? I mean, it's a fair balance between the two sides. So one of the things I liked in the presentation to the parliament, the minister said that they're introducing technology, they're using technology. For example, the biggest chunk of government budget goes to procurement. So now they're using technology to make it transparent. Who's bidding, who's buying, at what prices, so that you have transparency in the process. But that way, you can help reduce inefficiencies and other things, what we call shrinkages that happens when there are procurements. I mean, the use of technology. Deploying, building up the human capital, the institutional capacity, not only at the federal level, but you saw that a very large chunk of the budget goes to the regions. So build up the capacity at the regional level so that you know what is being brought in, what is being spent. But I think my thinking is technology definitely will enable the government. For example, now by the use of digital currencies, digital transactions, creates a lot of visibility for the government on the collection side, right? Things that you used to use cash to pay. Now if you're using mobile money, the tax people, the government, and others, even the people who are spending money, they're now very visible to the state. So at least now you can increase your resource mobilization. But at the same time, you can also monitor expenditure. Where is the money going? So I think I would rely a lot on technology to enable the government to determine is it being done efficiently. Of course, deploying auditors is one of the solutions the minister was promoting during his presentation. But I think if I were me, I would deploy technology massively and know where it's going, who's spending it, and is it being done smartly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ato Zamarin Gatsu.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay.
Ethiopia, as a country, has always been known worldwide the best place for tourism.
Remind me my visits to different beautiful sites in Ethiopia.
Tour guides are really important in the development of tourism.
In general, I would say they are the biggest ambassadors of the country and the sector.
All people is best for this city. This area, this is a national museum for Addis Ababa.
In the past 3 years, the tourism industry has been highly affected, first with COVID, and the second with the conflict that has happened in the northern part of the country.
Photo exhibition or events like this, one thing, it will be a meeting point, it will be a hub for the professional or for the industry stakeholders.
Addis is a vibrant and flourishing city where many people from the regions and the international community who are the diplomatic corps resident in Addis and also tourists passing via.
Best option for like in Ethiopia, Unity Park. This is the best option for visitor.
UN resident humanitarian coordinator in Ethiopia said the peace agreement signed in November 2023 between the Ethiopian government and TPLF was a landmark event that changed the life of millions. The coordinator, Catherine Sozi, underscored the improving livelihood of citizens in Ethiopia entails transforming vulnerable communities through viable resources. Goshumal has more on this.
UN humanitarian coordinator in Ethiopia who spent some time with ETV said the peace agreement signed in 2nd of November 2023 was a landmark event that changed the lives of millions.
The peace agreement that was signed in November last year was a life-changing event for millions of people. Millions of civilians were the ones who were running away from the bullets, the guns and the confusion that really displaced their lives. So you've got millions of internally displaced persons in this country, and yet they want to go home. Nearly just 4 million people are not living where they wanted to live. They've moved because they've had to move because of the circumstances. So I think this is policy that I know the government wants changed, and they've followed, for instance, around the internally displaced people, following the UN Secretary General's action plan on displaced persons for durable solutions for people.
Sozi underscored that it is necessary to transform the vulnerable communities using available resources to improve the livelihood of citizens in Ethiopia.
What do we need to do around agriculture, transformation, making sure that if there is food in places where there's a lot of rain, that it's able to sort out people who find themselves in situations that are not bearable? What is it that people need to transform their lives? Maybe moving around may not be the ideal situation with some of them, and maybe moving to urban areas where services are much better and more available is a more better situation. But it's not that easy, because some of the climate change issues, some people are feeling getting impact, even with conflicts, might be within families, might be villages, and that insecurity makes people run because they're looking for places of safety. So what prevention do we need around the social cohesion? Making sure that people sort out their differences in a better way rather than fighting, rather move towards dialogue.
The humanitarian coordinator reaffirmed the UN's commitment to intensify its technical expertise to support the peace deal.
The UN is committed, and it's a conversation I've had, that we work and support the efforts of government for the early recovery, reconciliation, reconstruction agenda. It's going to take years. It's also going to take a lot of resources, but the UN, even though we are not a donor, we will use our technical expertise to guide, to catalyze action on the ground so that we maximize on what we're calling the peace dividend that's happening at the moment.
Sozi finally urged the government to exert maximum efforts to implement sustainable development goals to move out its people from poverty.
Welcome Welcome to the land of origins. Commercial Bank of Ethiopia is pleased to serve all your traveler banking needs. If you have money from any of these 16 countries, you can convert it to local currency by visiting our nearest branch. Alternatively, our secure Forex ATMs accept cash exchange, or if you prefer using your cards, we've partnered with Visa, MasterCard, and UnionPay so that you can withdraw cash from our local ATMs or make cashless transactions at thousands of local POS partners securely and with confidence. We are linked with more than 700 global banks through our direct SWIFT address, CBE Teta. We also work with 16 international money transfer agents, out of which Tune and World Remit enable you to make direct deposits into our savings and current accounts or our popular CBE Birr mobile wallet. Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, the bank you can always rely on.
ይህ ቤተክርስቲያንና ቤተ መንግስት የተሰራው በእትዬ ምንትዋ በ1733 ዓመተ ምህረት ሲሆን እትዬ ምንትዋ ከቤተ መንግስቱ ወጥተው እዚህ ሊሰሩበት የቻሉበት ምክንያት ለእመቤታችንም ትልቅ የሆነ ፍቅር ነበራቸው። እንዲሁም ከቤተ መንግስቱ ወጥተው ወደዚህ መምጣታቸው ስደትን ስለሚያስታውሳቸው የእመቤታችንን የስደት ሁኔታ አስታውሰው ቅዱስ ቁስቋም ቤተክርስቲያን ብለው የእመቤታችን ቤተክርስቲያን አሰርተዋል። ከዚህ ቤተክርስቲያን ጀርባ ቤተ መንግስታቸውን አሰርተዋል ማለት ነው።
Welcome back in. You are watching ETV News. UNHCR Climate Change High Commissioner Andrew Harper reiterated that planting tree seedlings today will help to secure a better future. Talking to ETV, Harper elaborated Ethiopia has done an impressive job in taking a step without waiting for the rest of the world to do the same. Teresa sat with him and compiled the following report.
Climate change is already having visible effects on the world. The earth is warming, rainfall patterns are changing, and sea levels are rising. These changes can increase the risk of heat waves, floods, droughts, and fires. UNHCR figures suggest that an annual average of 21.5 million people have been forcibly displaced by extreme weather such as storms, floods, fires, and extreme temperatures since 2008. Paying an official visit to Malkadida in Ethiopia's Somali region, UNHCR High Commissioner for Climate Change Andrew Harper told ETV that policymakers in Geneva need to finance refugee hosting communities in Ethiopia that were displaced due to unbearable climate conditions.
What I'd be asking for, and what I have been asking since I arrived in Ethiopia, is to see whether we can get climate financing to support those communities that have been doing so much to help refugees, because they are being impacted by climate change. The droughts that we've had over the last 5 planting seasons have been caused or have been exacerbated by climate change. And so we need to be working in a very much collaborative manner, and that's the message that I'll be taking back to Geneva, to Brussels, to New York, and elsewhere, that we need to support the host communities in Ethiopia, because unless we support them, it's very difficult to expect them to support refugees.
Taking initiative to plant 50 billion tree seedlings, Harper says Ethiopia has provided a leadership that many other countries should take note of.
Well, I think Ethiopia is providing a leadership which many other countries should take note of and replicate. The ambition to plant 50 billion trees is great. We need to ensure that we don't only plant the trees, but that we also ensure that the trees grow to maturity and that they can provide a livelihood for the population.
He further added that planting tree seedlings today will help secure a better future.
I've been talking to people in Melchizedek because many people there sort of say, look, we can't wait 6 years for the trees to grow to give us fruit. But what I was saying to them is, look, the crops are for today, but for the trees are for your children. You need to be investing in a future, an increasingly uncertain future for your children, and the trees are key to that. So we need to make sure that we've got 50 billion trees planted, and we need to make sure that those 50 billion trees turn into livelihood opportunities that not only protect the environment, but can provide the people with a future.
Harper also elaborated that Ethiopia has been impressive in taking a step to initiate without waiting for the rest of the world to do it.
What is so impressive about Ethiopia is the dynamic nature of the population, the industrial willingness to do things. And so I think the rest of the world could learn by sort of saying you're not waiting for others to do things.
State Minister of Planning and Development Sandokan Dababa discussed with the officials of the Global Environmental Facility GEF and the Green Climate Fund GCF on the margins of the ongoing Climate Change Conference of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Bonn, Germany. In the discussion, Sandokan stated that Ethiopia is working with due emphasis by integrating climate change and environmental issues in its long-term plan to ensure that its prosperity will not be hindered by the impact of climate change. Ethiopia is one of the oldest literary civilizations in the world. The literary civilization in Ethiopia has a long history and has its own alphabet. The foundation and development of literacy in Ethiopia has a very close relationship, especially with the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Calligraphy on parchment is still practiced today, albeit on a small scale. Our reporter Johannes van Town met and sat down with church minister during his stay in Lalibela, a town in northern Wallo zone of Amhara state, reputed for its rock-hewn churches. The following one-person story is for tonight.
My name is Lissane Tebeb Shwangzao Melku Zelalibela. I currently teach church liturgies that we call Akwaqam Hivat Beta Mariam Monastery. Alongside the teaching, I'm also working on the preparation of ancient parchment books and drawings, starting with ink and parchment preparation. This is a very remarkable place. Many great fathers hail from it. I have seen with my own eyes those who bound books, wrote with parchment, prepared sacramental goods, and made iron and wooden crosses. But nowadays, compared to the past, there are not many people doing this. In fact, if you search it for such talent these days, I'm afraid you won't spot more than a couple of people. Although there are young people who are making the sacred paintings, the number of manuscript writers has a slump. This is one of Ethiopia's tourist attraction spots. My customers' base is mostly comprised of tourists. While they see me preparing parchment, preparing ink, drawing pictures and writing various books, they also buy books and holy pictures. In addition to this, Ethiopians make orders for church services such as Sinagzarwe. Wet and dry skins are used for parchment preparation. If it is dry, we soak it in water for about 3 days. Then we iron and clean it with different tools. After the back hair is scraped off with a knife, it will be washed again. Then we cut it with the size we want. After cutting to size for large, medium and small books, the next step is to line them. We line a piece of paper with a thin wire and sharp tip. We make dates from various types of plants. One preparation takes a half year by grinding black barley and boiling it. Then it will be written with this type of reed that I have. For example, I wrote a 6-year book using 300 goat skins. It is found in St. Mary Monastery of Ntoto. The book is the hagiography of the 12 apostles.
The 7th International Flower Trade Expo, IFTEX 2023, took place on Ashwal Center, Nairobi, Kenya. A delegation led by Nega Makwanand, President of the Ethiopian Horticulture Producers and Exporters Association, along with Tedros Zode, CEO of the association, and many Ethiopian flower growers participated and showcased Ethiopian flowers to the world market. Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy, Work Alam Maudesta, visited the Ethiopian stand and encouraged the Ethiopian team to showcase the Ethiopian flowers. IFTEX 2023 is the largest edition since its inception in 2012, with over 200 companies from different parts of the world participating in the exhibition. Infants and special needs children were amongst 300 evacuated from a Khartoum orphanage where they were caught in crossfire on Sudan's raging battle, according to Red Cross. The children were brought to a safe location in Wadanandi, around 200 kilometers southeast of Khartoum. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and UAE see the war in Sudan sides have agreed to a nationwide ceasefire, but only for 24 hours starting on Saturday. Johannes van Town has the following story.